There's a good saying that, like Noah, it was always saying that the flood is coming. The flood is always coming. There's always in your future a flood of chaos and sickness and disaster, and every possible circumstance or outcome is out there waiting somewhere. And you just don't know what's going to become manifest in your life. And so finding a way to develop the skills, the practical skills, to actually deal with some grace and some poise with the challenges of life is such a useful thing. So this is one of the problems, and this goes to really one of the fundamental problems of a universe, if you believe in it having a divine source to it, is there is always the problem of evil. How do you explain away the chance that you could come face to face with real evil in this world? Because you would think, if there was a God that created the universe, why would he put evil into it? Why would he just not make us only have good and positive experience?
So I think that what we are is we are anti-fragile. When a glass is pushed over, it breaks. So glass is fragile. But if we are pushed over as human beings and we incur shocks, we don't break, we actually become stronger. And if you never do face a challenge, that's when you break.
There's an idea or the analogy of a bunny rabbit. You can look at a bunny rabbit and you think, bunny rabbits are so sweet and gentle and soft and they never hurt anyone. And so the question is, well, are they a morally and ethically good being? And you would say, well, no, they're actually just harmless. And there's a real difference between being harmless in the world and not realizing your own capacity for that darkness to act out through you.
Well, hello, Seeker friends, and welcome back to the Acceptance of Life podcast. I'm so glad that you tuned in again to watch and listen, as Vajan and me have a wonderful conversation this episode about challenges. And so we talk about in depth about what actually is a challenge and why are they so helpful and useful to us in our life if our aim is to make spiritual progress. Vajan lays out his 3-step process in how to deal with challenges. And he also backs it up with a wonderful epic story that he had in India that has all the ingredients of an epic blockbuster thriller. What I really appreciate about this episode is Vajan's take on the existence of evil in the world and why this is actually part of the cosmic game. So that was my intro. I hope you enjoy the episode. Okay, Vajan, it's great to see you again.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
And I think we have something to celebrate because this is episode 8. And so now we are in the top, the top 10% of podcasts?
I think top 20%.
Oh, yeah.
I think 80% of podcasts finish at 7 episodes or less. So if you make it to 8, you're already in the top 20% of all 20%. Time. Wow.
So we're doing good. Oh, yeah. Nice to hear. So today, actually, I wanted to talk about challenges. And because I think challenges are one of the secrets to spiritual growth. Don't you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say about challenges. I'm excited to find out what they are and what we can do with them.
All good, all good. So I'm actually going to start with a little analogy because this is something that I also talk about in my meditation classes in Amsterdam. And I want you to think for a moment of a tomato, a greenhouse tomato. So in my country, in the Netherlands, we are actually the second largest exporter of fruits and vegetables in the world, which is really a bit of a miracle if you consider the size of our country.
It is. It shows the Dutch efficiency.
Very efficient. We love our vertical farming. We love our greenhouse farming. So we have in the west of our country, we have like hundreds of these large greenhouses. And that's where we grow all our fruits and veggies for the export market. And if you consider a tomato that grows up in a greenhouse like that, it actually has a perfect life, you could say, right? Because it's like all the parameters that it needs to grow are there in perfectly calibrated measure. So, the tomato has nutrient-rich soil. It has all the space that it can grow, and it doesn't have so much competition from other plants that are growing nearby. It has the perfect lighting. So, it can get all the light that it needs, and it gets all the nutrition that it needs. The water is perfect. And then there's no seasonal difficulty. So it doesn't have to battle with the elements in order to survive, right? So everything is made so that the tomato has like a perfect life. And then when you see the tomato grow, it really grows pretty big and pretty impressive. And so the tomatoes that kind of end up at the end of a growth cycle are these really big, juicy, impressive looking tomatoes. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but in the supermarket sometimes, especially in the cheaper supermarkets, you can see these really impressive looking big tomatoes.
Yeah.
There is only one problem with this tomato.
Oh no, there's a problem? Oh no,
There
but they
is a
have a
problem.
perfect life. How did this happen?
Yeah. And the problem is it doesn't have a great taste. It tastes very bland. You know, it's actually a lot of water in there. And when you taste it, it's like, I'm missing missing something here. And everybody in the Netherlands actually knows this. So I often ask this question to my to the people, the seekers who come to the class, and they always say, "Oh yeah, the taste is awful."
Yeah.
And if you contrast that with an organic tomato, so a tomato that grows in the wild and that has no greenhouse around it to protect it, so it's exposed to all the elements. It has to battle the rain, the cold, the wind, storms, everything that it's throwing at.
Insects and infestations.
Yes, exactly. Plagues of insects. It has to compete for space with all the other bushes and tomato and whatever is growing near it. The soil is not perfect. It has to very often reach deep to get the proper nutrients. And as we know, the soils nowadays, they're quite nutrient poor. So the poor tomato plant has to really struggle to survive. And it's not certain even if it makes it. Every day it could die. It could not have enough nutrients or water or sunlight. And so when this tomato survives, it is not as impressive looking as the greenhouse tomato. It's much smaller, but it has this beautiful deep red color. Like, not the greenhouse tomato, looks quite pale in comparison. And the best thing is, of course, it tastes amazing. So This organic tomato, when you taste it, it's like, yes, this is what a tomato tastes like. And actually, especially in countries where they have a lot of natural organic farming. So I was, a year ago or so, I was in the Balkans in Macedonia. And that's a country known for its fantastic tomatoes. And there, the tomatoes that you taste, it's like, whoa, it's like a taste explosion. And all their tomatoes grow in the wild there. So it's the natural way for the tomato to be. But what I find interesting, if I connect it back, this is actually what a challenge does to us, as well as it does to the tomato. It gives us taste. So a challenge, I think it's the reason the tomato tastes so good, is it had to face all these myriad challenges throughout its life. The elements, the lack of lighting, the lack of soil, everything. And by going through all these challenges, it developed this wonderful taste. And so if you connect that back to our life in the human world, we have something akin to the greenhouse tomato, and that is what we call the couch potato, right?
The couch potato. Oh my God, that thing.
Comes home from work, plunks down on the couch, switches on the TV, and just vegetates, right? Vegetates the whole evening, is consuming, is being entertained, and the only challenge that the couch potato faces is to get a new drink from the fridge or to, restock the chips or something like that. And you can see also the couch potato can swell up to a nice, beautiful size, just like the greenhouse tomato.
It's also very tasteless as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't have a lot of one of the defining features.
Yes.
The couch potato.
Yeah, and so, in our day and age, we can live a life like that. We can live a life where we are just consuming and where we have very little challenges. If we would live 100 years ago, like, we would not have to engineer the challenges into our life like we do now. Like, we kind of engineer challenges into our life. That's why people run marathons, and that's why they challenge themselves in various ways. But 100 years ago, life itself just posed so many challenges. So we were kind of more like the organic tomato, naturally formatted to face life's challenges. So even doing the laundry, you had to go down to the river and use natural water and kind of beat the clothes on this laundry rack. And it took a day just to do the laundry. And, not to mention gathering food and other resources and staying warm for the winter and chopping wood and all these kind of things. But in our current day and age, of course, we live in such a wonderfully comfortable world that most of the challenges, the natural challenges, we kind of engineered them out of our life. So if we shy away from all challenges, then I think the danger is that we become kind of tasteless in a way. We lose flavor. And I think the synonym for flavor is like character, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what challenges do. They give us character. They make us grow as persons, and they make our life, they make us more interesting. They make us explore deeper layers in ourselves that we otherwise would have not explored. And so that's often what I find so fascinating about challenges, that they seem to be something that we want to avoid.
Yeah.
Right. So our natural reaction would be to avoid the challenge.
Yeah.
And we can often do so.
Yeah, and we often think that our life would be great if we'd got rid of all the challenges. We think, oh, I'll really be able to enjoy my life when I deal with all of these challenges I have at the moment, then I can enjoy my life. So it's that idea of sort of delayed gratification. We can enjoy our life when we get rid of all of these problems, and then we can just relax and enjoy life.
And so that's a great short-term strategy, but I think it's an awful long-term strategy. And I think there's definitely value to engineering the harsh challenges out of life. So it's great that we have a world where we are comfortable, where we have a roof over our heads, where we can buy food in the supermarket or at the organic store. And, that is fantastic. But we do need challenges in our life to grow. So, and I think that's what I mentioned earlier, that nowadays we kind of have to engineer the challenge into our lives, right? You see that why so many people are doing that nowadays with various ways of how they challenge themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the fastest growing sporting events in the world are ultra marathons and triathlons and these type of difficult, long duration endurance events. And especially I see in the sport that I come from trail running, you've had such a huge explosion of people taking part in the last 15 years. And I think a big part of that is a reaction to this life of comfort and ease that we've created. And people are not finding challenge. People are not finding struggles and difficulty. And then I think as well with people moving towards events in the natural setting as well, I think people are also trying to find a connection back to nature through that as well. So I see that through my sport, that instead of doing events on the road, which are still very popular, but I see more and more people interested in doing off-road events. So they want to spend a good amount of time outside in nature, doing something hard and challenging. And they see, or perhaps they don't even understand why they're doing, but there's some part of them that sees that and sees some tremendous value in that.
Yeah, I mean, we've booked tremendous progresses in the in science and technology and making our lives more comfortable. But if you find yourself at the end of a Friday sitting in your cubicle staring at your screen, and you realize that you've been doing that for the past 5 days, I think you get a feeling of I'm missing something. My life is lacking some. I think it's some adventure that you're missing. And I think for so many centuries and perhaps millennia, we have had life was so naturally adventurous and dangerous and risky that somehow that's still in our DNA. I think that we miss that, and that's why exactly like we want to go back to nature. We want to explore those types of life.
Yeah. So well, let's take it back to the foundation of this thing we're talking about. So we're talking about challenges. And so I think it's good to have an idea of what a challenge actually is. Because the interesting thing about challenges is they're all relative. So they're all relative and personal to you. So what may seem challenging to someone else may seem very easy to you. And what may seem challenging to you, someone else will look at it and it won't be a challenge at all. And so how I try and capture the idea of what a challenge is it's a situation or an activity that with a high degree of difficulty in comparison or in relation to your capabilities. Yeah. So I think that's a good way of capturing what it is.
I think a challenge has to be properly calibrated to your capacity.
Yeah,
like if it's too easy, the bar is too low, it's not a challenge. You just jump over the hurdle, you step over it basically. But if it's too hard, if I, for instance, I go and play tennis with Djokovic, and he plays his A game, it would not be fun at all. It would be like, you could say that's very challenging, but that's too difficult. So the difficulty level should be just properly calibrated so that with my current tennis skills, I can have a nice match. So maybe you and me can have a nice tennis match.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to think as well, because challenges can exist, I think, in two ways. Sometimes an activity can be a challenging thing. So say we've chosen that we want to run our first marathon, and we've never run that distance before. So that activity is really challenging. And I think there's then the other sorts of challenges is situational, I think. So sometimes your work situation can be really challenging. It can be a big challenge for you, having to find a way to navigate the difficulties of the relationships in your work setting. Or it might be a relationship or a family challenge where there's some difficulties between the personalities and the characters, involved in the family dynamics. Or it might be your business situation. It's like a challenging time in the business, your company or your career. And so you're trying to navigate those challenges. And the other interesting thing is that there's challenges that we ourselves choose to take on. So obviously, doing an activity is often a challenge that we choose. So we take it on ourselves. So we choose that we're going to run a marathon. And so those are great because there's some type of engagement and there's some sense of agency and purpose. We chose to take on this challenge, and so we invested and engaged in it because of that. So it's our choice. We're using our free will, and we're choosing that we're going to run a marathon. And that compares with the other type, which is often the situational type. So someone in your family gets really sick, and you've got to deal with that. Your parents are aging, and you've got to deal with that situation. That's a situation where it's thrust upon you. And there's also in those situational challenges, there's a sense of chaos and uncertainty in them. It's often the uncertainty of the world has thrust this situation into your life. So things are not the same. Your life is no longer the same as it was a few days before. So if your parents get ill or have an injury or an accident, suddenly you're in a challenging situation that's in some ways outside of your control. And so I would say those are by far the more difficult types of challenges, because
the ones that you did not choose yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You did not choose it. It's been thrust upon you. The uncertainty of the world has burst into your life. The chaos of the world has burst into your life. And then you have to deal with that situation. And it might be you get an illness or a diagnosis, or you have an accident. And I know you've had a few of those in the last few years, where the uncertainty and the chaos of the world has suddenly burst into your life. And then you've got to deal with that challenge. And what I like to think about with the situation is when we've got challenges that we can choose, and then challenges that choose us, let's say, we can really use the activities that we find challenging, or situations that we create that are challenging. We can use those as ways to develop the strengths and skills to deal with the other types of challenges. So when those challenges burst forth into our lives, if we haven't been doing anything that's challenging, it can almost be overwhelming. We don't have the skills in place to deal with it.
So it's like the challenges that you voluntarily choose. It's like you're practicing your skill to deal with challenging.
Exactly. And there's a good saying that, like Noah, it was always saying that the flood is coming. The flood is always coming. There's always in your future a flood of chaos and sickness and disaster. And every possible circumstance or outcome is out there waiting somewhere. And you just don't know what's going to become manifest in your life. And so finding a way to develop the skills, the practical skills, to actually deal with some grace and some poise with the challenges of life is such a useful thing. And as well, those challenges, like so much of it comes from how we frame the challenges. And so like the framework or the picture of what type of universe we have in. And so if people are interested in thinking about different types of universes, they can look back in some of our previous episodes where we discuss
episode 2, to be exact.
Episode 2, where we discuss such concepts. But for the idea of challenges, I think the quote that I shared for one of our recent episodes from Albert Einstein is really, really useful. It's a really useful point to start with, because I think what we want to talk about, you and I, which would be...
Let's recap that quote. It's like you have the choice.
Yeah, so the quote is, the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or a hostile universe.
Yeah, so if the chaos enters into your life, your default position would be to think, oh, the universe is just hostile.
Yeah.
it's
exactly.
throwing. It's
So,
really
so that frame of whether we believe we live in a friendly or a hostile universe, it brings meaning into everything that appears in our life. All of the chaos, all of the situations, all of the experiences we have. It's that basic framework of what type of universe you believe you live in. And
But
like,
if you choose to believe in the friendly version,
yes,
as you know, may seem to be the most pleasant way of navigating life, then your belief system is totally shocked and tested when you encounter this kind of chaos. I mean, how do you still hold that belief if you don't have the proof around you, if your whole life kind of collapses around you?
yeah, very good question. And I think that's a question that a lot of people might have. So
Sure.
So let's look at the two options there. So if we believe we live in a hostile universe, basically we believe that the universe is out to get us. It's out to cause us harm and ultimately to kill us. And it's always going to succeed. So that's a little bit of a dead end approach, I think, to life, because as soon as you put that as your position, you're always just waiting for the next bad thing to happen in your life.
But I think what people would say is that this is not a position that I take. This is just the truth. This is just how the universe is. It's like that. I don't choose to believe that. That is just how it is.
Yeah. And so the answer to that is you don't get an ought from an is. So if you know how the universe is structured, so let's look at it from the point of view of Einstein, how he was thinking about this idea. So he was trying to understand how the universe is put together. Like, what are the rules, the fundamental rules by which the universe is operating? And so he did a really amazing job of calculating things and coming up with theories which explained how the universe operates. But then he still said, even if you understand how the universe is structured and put together and works, it still doesn't tell you how you ought to relate with it. It doesn't tell you what meaning you should try and gain from that. You understand like the basic structure of it, but it doesn't tell you how you ought to relate to it. Should you feel as though it's friendly or hostile? And so when like you were saying, that if you could think that if you chose that, okay, I believe I live in a friendly universe, and then bad things happen, that will destroy your picture of a friendly universe. But instead, I look at it from another perspective. And I would say that if I believe I live in a friendly universe and the universe has my best intentions in mind when events happen to me, then I would know that whatever happens to me, that first of all, the universe believes I have the capability and the capacity to deal with it. So that would be the first thing. So the universe trusts that it can give me this type of experience because it believes, or it knows that I have the ability to deal with it.
So it's like this mother bird that nudges the young out of the nest and says, you can fly, go, and they fall down and they have to fly, and lo and behold, they realize they can fly.
Yeah, because the bird, he's got to make a choice. Does he believe his mother is friendly and has his best intentions at heart, or is she hostile and trying to kill him? Yeah. So you could choose either of those positions from the action of the mother pushing you out of the nest. You still need to make the choice. Okay, does she really care for me and believe in me, or is she just trying to kill me? And then I would say the other position I would take then. So the first is that whatever happens to me, that I take the position that the universe trusts that I have the capability and the capacity to deal with it. And secondly, the universe knows that I will learn something through that experience. So that's how I look at it. So when I take the position of living in a friendly universe, I see it as because the thing is, a true friend is someone who has your best interests at heart. And so whatever they do and whatever actions they take towards you, even if you don't understand them fully, you believe that, okay, this person, because they're a true friend to me on the deepest possible sense, they only want to see the best outcomes for me in the long term. It doesn't mean in the short term they're going to make everything easy and remove all the challenges. But whatever challenges that they put in front of me, they've seen that I have the ability to deal with them and that I will learn something important and valuable from dealing with them.
So now I'm gonna play devil's advocate a little bit.
Please.
What if you are living in Rwanda in the 90s and your neighbor comes by and slaughters your whole family? I mean, this is one of the darkest scenarios I can think of just right off the bat. Yeah. But this kind of super dark scenario, like how could you ever learn from that because you're traumatized for life.
Yeah. So this is one of the problems, and this goes to really one of the fundamental problems of a universe, if you believe in it having a divine source to it, is there is always the problem of evil. How do you explain away the ability and the chance that you could come face to face with real evil in this world? Because you would think if there was a God that created the universe, why would he put evil into it? Why would he just not make us only have good and positive experience?
Especially a God that is all loving, as all the scriptures state.
Exactly. And so in my position here, that if I'm believing that we live in a friendly universe, why is it that within a friendly universe there's the potential to experience evil and at that type of level? And I would say that the answer to that to me is for the universe to be ultimately meaningful and fulfilling, you have to give as much freedom to the universe to express every possible experience within it. And so it's the idea that when you're trying to play a game that is going to be most meaningful over the longest period of time possible, you have to make it optimally difficult. And so as soon as you put guardrails in to say, okay, nothing this bad can ever happen, the game is no longer optimally difficult. You've simplified the game. You've made it easier than it could possibly be. And so if you're infinite consciousness and you're trying to act out the most meaningful experience you can over the longest possible period of time, you have to remove the guardrails. So by making the guardrails and saying, okay, this is too bad, this can never ever happen, so everything has to be from here and above, these types of experiences. That's not a transcendently difficult game. Like the most difficult possible game has the potentiality, the most extreme potentiality in both directions. So in one direction, you can realize that you yourself are a manifestation of the divine creative force that brought this universe about. But then on the other extreme, to have that very highest possible experience, at the other extreme, you have to be able to suffer from the most tremendous ignorance in the world. So I think
you could be an instrument for the ignorance. You could be
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that really makes the game so much more difficult, but actually so much more meaningful. So do
you think that even a person who suffers that kind of trauma can learn from it? Is there a lesson there to be learned?
I would say that the universe has faith in them that they can, if they survive these experiences, that have the strength to survive these things, and then that also that they can learn something from that. And so a good example for this might be the Lost Boys of Sudan. And so there's a famous story. I'm not sure if you know of the Lost Boys of Sudan, but Sudan plunged into this terrible civil war at some point, and basically nearly all of the adults in villages were getting killed, and the children were running off into the forest and then grouping up together, and then they were trying to trek across southern Sudan while being pursued by enemy combatants, while being attacked by wild animals, and trying to make it to Ethiopia to try and...
What year was this?
I think it was in the early 2000s. I'm not exactly sure. It might have been it's sometime in the last 20 or 30 years. And some of these boys survived these experiences and then managed to leave Africa. And America took a lot of them in as refugees and asylum seekers. And I have read one book by one of these boys, and it's just so unbelievably heartbreaking, the experiences he went through. But he did manage to find a way to create a new life for himself in a different country. And I think what happens is when you see the worst possible darkness, you can actually appreciate the light. It's when your life is somewhere in the beige middle phases of the world, you never really understand how good things can be or how bad things can be. But it's like when you've really faced up to the difficulties and the darkness that's inherent in this reality, then it really drives you, I think, to move towards the light, because you see so much value in that beauty and that light. And it's such a contrast to what you have experienced.
So many times when people survive a war, like I know that in Europe after the Second World War, that was one of the happiest times, like the 50s. Yeah. There was such a time of optimism and joy, especially when people were liberated from that reign. Yeah, that was a time when many people who survived that and who are now, not many are alive, but I've heard them say that was the most happy time of their life, like just after the war.
Yeah.
So I think it's true.
And I think if we look at people who went through those experiences, and then you look at the depth of character that they have. So like you talk about with the analogy of the greenhouse versus the organic tomato, someone who has faced real hardship, like someone who was interned in a camp in World War II, the people who came out of that, obviously there's a huge amount of trauma that they carry, but there's an unbelievable depth of character that they've developed. And so some of the art and the thinking and just the deep humanity that they developed through those experiences. And obviously you would never ask to have that experience if you were given the choice. But yet if you do go through that, it does give you a depth of humanity that I think many people are lacking. And many people, when they see it, they feel a tremendous depth. And you feel that there's something really inspiring about someone who's really faced real darkness and has come out the other side.
Yeah, I think Nelson Mandela is a great example of that. So he was in prison for 27 years, absolutely brutal regime.
And he was mistreated mercilessly in the prison system as well.
And humiliated. And he came out so well. I mean, he's definitely, I would say, one of the prime examples of somebody who has real depth of character, and just by his very presence inspires people. Yeah. And so I think there's something that goes out from you if you've lived through these experiences and also treated them in the right way, like learned the lessons and really, because I do believe that Nelson Mandela is a believer in the friendly universe. Like you can see from his whole demeanor, and he chose together with Desmond Tutu, they formed this commission and they chose to forgive their perpetrators. Like they did not prosecute them, but they said the only way to go forward for our country is if we forgive them. And that is such a noble thing to do, and also such a good thing to do if you want to move forward. And so from those people, there's something that emanates from them. That's why they're such inspiring figures, both Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela. Everybody in the world knows who they are and appreciates and admires them for their character.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you ask people, even in their own small ways, about some of the most difficult and challenging experiences they've had in their lives, often, I think I've mentioned, if you ask someone who's had a serious illness, a more serious accident, if they wish that they didn't happen, and very often they realize and see that those experiences, those difficult and challenging experiences they went through, were actually so deeply transformative that if they had the choice, they would actually choose to go through the experience again, because they've seen how it's deepened their character. It's somehow, even though it's such a painful and hard experience, in some way it's moved them closer to God, which seems counterintuitive, but it's like when you harden a steel or do something to make something stronger, you have to put it under tremendous stress. And then from that stress comes this corresponding strength and deep capacity to deal with the problems of the world.
So I think that what we are is we are anti-fragile. This concept.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that concept.
When a glass is pushed over, it breaks. So glass is fragile. But if we are pushed over as human beings and we incur shocks, we don't break. We actually become stronger. So, for instance, the immune system is an example of something that is anti-fragile. When the immune system gets a shock, it actually becomes stronger. But I think also we as human beings, as beings in this universe, whenever we face a challenge, we don't break, but we become stronger. And if you never do face a challenge, that's when you break.
Yeah. No, that's all very true. And I was just thinking as well about to become truly good in this world. In some ways, we have to experience and see some of the darkness, because that darkness also exists within us. And so, like, there's an idea or the analogy of a bunny rabbit. you can look at a bunny rabbit and you think, oh, bunny rabbits are so sweet and gentle and soft, and they never hurt anyone. And so the question is, well, are they a morally and ethically good being? And you would say, well, no, they're actually just harmless. And there's a real difference between being harmless in the world and not realizing your own capacity for that darkness to act out through you. That's a very different position. When you do realize that darkness of the world, and then you choose to do the right thing. It's like this idea that you need to be as a dangerous being or a dangerous person, and then choose to do the good, choose the right thing, choose to move towards the divine. That's when you really become an ethical and deeply moral being. And before that, because a lot of people would say, I would never do anything to harm other people.
Yeah.
And very often it's simply you've never been in a situation where you could do that and think you would get away with it.
Well, the famous experiment in the 60s, the Stanley Milgram experiments, right? Where people were ordered. It was dressed as a science experiment where they were ordered to give electroshocks to people in adjacent rooms. I mean, almost everybody knows of these experiences. And there was a scientist in a white coat, because a white coat is authority, an authority figure standing next to them, and then they had to increase the voltage all the time. So they had to administer a shock. And then at some point they heard the person in the next room screaming out of pain. But the scientist says, okay, higher. And an amazing, I forget the percentage, but it was like maybe 75% of the participants, they went all the way until the sound in the other room stopped. So, it was assumed that the shocks were so high, they were actually dead. And that is when people say like, oh, if I would have been in World War II, I would have never collaborated with the Nazis, or I would have been a good person. And you cannot really say that. You don't know if you've never been tested, if you've never had to face that darkness, as you say. And that's what this experiment shows. Like even the most people who thought of themselves as ethically sound,
it's good people,
and they also went all the way to the extreme.
And I've got an example of that I lived through. And in 2011, I was over in Canada and I was helping my friends start a music store similar to what I do here in New Zealand. And it was really interesting because it was during the Stanley Cup, the American Ice Hockey League's finals series. And so it's a 7-game series. And so the Vancouver Canucks were in the final series. And
the Canucks, I've seen them play. I've been to.
Oh, have you?
Game when I was an exchange student in British Columbia in 1995. I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so everyone knows the Canadians are famously polite and mild mannered. And so wherever you go, it's like the famous saying that you'll stand on a Canadian's foot and they'll apologize to you. Oh, sorry. And so the Canadians are famously polite and well mannered. And the only time you get any glimpse of something deeper and beyond that is in the ice hockey, because the ice hockey is just such a wondrously violent sport. And so the playoff series was going on, and it came down to the very last game in Vancouver. And that was like 3 games apiece. Each team had won 3 games. And then in the final deciding game in Vancouver, they lost. And so you would think, well, these are Canadian.
The opponent?
I forget who the other team was. It was one of the American teams. But you would think, well, the Canadians are wonderfully polite and well-mannered people, so, that will be fine. And instead what happened was there was a huge riot downtown. So, like, all these young people and students and all sorts of people from all over came in and started smashing windows and lighting things on fire. And I remember, because I was working at our store, and that night I went outside and I noticed my eyes were stinging. And I was thinking, oh, what is going on? It was actually tear gas blowing over from downtown onto Granville Island, where I was working at the shop. And what happened was that there was a few troublemakers in the crowd. So after the game, they'd specifically come in to cause trouble. So they had masks, they had fire, they had gasoline and things to light fires. And so 1 or 2 of them started throwing bricks and breaking windows. And so all of these young people who would have, if you had asked them before that experience, if they would ever have, smashed a shop window or looted a store or been involved in any sort of this general disorder, they would have said, no way. Like, I'm a good person. I would never do that sort of thing. And it all came out in the aftermath because the Canadians were so ashamed and embarrassed of this that they did an amazing job of tracking down all of the perpetrators. So anyone who threw a brick through a window, anyone who lit stuff on fire. And it turned out to be all of these young college kids who had no criminal record. They had no prior involvement in any general disorder or anything like that. But because they found themselves in a situation where other people were doing these things, and it seemed as though there would be no consequence. It seemed as though if you were with a crowd of people and then someone else is throwing bricks through a window and you look around and there seems to be no consequence, you suddenly can get dragged into this sort of thing. And so people who would otherwise have considered themselves morally upstanding citizens actually started to act out all these dark parts of themselves that they didn't even know existed. And so, yeah, a lot of them, unfortunately for them, really paid a heavy price for that. But it was really interesting to see that play out, that often people who think of themselves as good are simply just harmless people who've never perhaps had the opportunity to do anything bad. And so to realizing that we all have that capacity both to do incredible good and incredible evil, and then choosing to only do the good, that's when you really start becoming a deeply moral and I would say spiritual person, because you start to orientate yourself towards the good.
Interesting point. What I also find interesting about challenges, just to kind of go back to that idea of the chaos of the world invading, is that our life basically starts with a challenge, right?
Yeah.
So if you go back to just before we were born, it's like we were in this greenhouse for 9 months of our life, in our mother's womb, and we got all the nutrients that we needed, and we got all the circumstances were just perfect. So we were that little greenhouse tomato as a fetus. But then came the woeful day when we had to leave that wonderful environment and be born
into the world.
Yeah, and birth is actually a traumatic experience. I mean, that's no wonder that all babies come into the world crying. It's for a reason. It's really hard to leave that wonderful, warm, safe space and then go out into this totally unknown world, and you're being thrown out into the world basically, and everything is new and strange and uncomfortable. But it's almost like life is saying, look, if you want to make life happen, then this is the challenge. And the first challenge is it's forced upon us. We cannot choose to be born or not to be born in that moment. We actually already made the choice, you could say. And then at the end of our life, there's another challenge waiting for us. You could say that also is a challenge, because it's the great unknown, like what's going to happen. And we may have beliefs and we may have really strong-held ideas, but in the end, it is a leap into the unknown again. And of course, you leave behind everything that is, that is comfortable for you and that is known and familiar. And so it's interesting that life begins and ends with a challenge, and in between, that's where life happens.
Yeah, exactly. So let's think about some of the qualities that we actually need, I think, like a practical set of ideas that we can bring to bear on dealing with the problems of our lives. And so for me, the first and foremost step in dealing with a challenge is acceptance. And so for those of you who are new to our podcast, we are the Acceptance of Life podcast. If you go back to episode 1, we talk about this idea of acceptance. And really, as we talk about in the episode, in every moment, every situation we find ourselves in, there's one key choice we're making. Do we accept the experience, or do we resist it? And so this is very often with challenges, the first approach people often take is resisting it. They think, oh, why did it have to be me? Why did this happen? Why did I find myself in this situation? And so we waste so much time and energy wishing things to be some other way. And as I've said, if you do that and try and resist reality, you're always going to lose. Reality is this unstoppable force. And so the sooner you can change your position and come to a place of acceptance that this is the situation you're in, the sooner you will stop wasting time and energy, and the sooner you'll find yourself in a position where you can start actually dealing with the situation or the challenge in front of you, and you can actually start being proactive. Because the thing is,
it's like life is happening for you in a certain way, and all of a sudden reality takes like a left turn.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, this is my life. This is reality. And before you know it, your life has already changed. And
Yeah,
that's the disconnect, that you're not there yet, but actually
yeah,
reality is already there. But you're still in your
exactly,
lane. You still want to go this way, and
exactly.
that's hard. It's hard to accept that.
Yeah, it is. But the sooner we realize and understand that this is the way that the universe is going, this is the experiences we're having, this is the situation we found ourselves in, the sooner we can start being productive and proactive. We can start changing things. We can start making choices and making actions that are actually going to help deal with the situation in a more useful and a more sensible fashion. So for me, that's really one key. So we probably don't need to talk about acceptance too much, but I think that's always a great thing to come back to. That we need to accept life as it presents itself to us, and then deal with that and try and transform it from that position. So accept that.
Acceptance first step.
So then the question starts to become, okay, what's the next step to take? And so I've got a few other qualities or a few other ideas that I like to bring to bear on any challenges that I'm facing. And so probably the next one I think that's really powerful is peace of mind. And you may say, hey, hang on a second, like I've got a problem here. I've got a challenge. I'm not, how is peace of mind? How am I going to find peace of mind when I'm dealing with some terrible situation at work, or some terrible situation in my family, or something that I find really, really difficult? And so why I would say having some peace is, when you have peace, peace is the antidote to fear, worry, doubts, insecurity. Like when you have peace of mind, it allows you to be present here in the moment. When you don't have any peace of mind, when you're suddenly caught by worries or anxieties or fear, you're following all of these trains of potential. What if this happens? What if that happens? You're constantly being pulled out of the present moment. So if we can come at the problems and the challenges of our lives from a foundation of peace, that allows us to be centered in the here and now, and then allows us to really have all of our attention on the situation in front of us. So instead of being caught by all of the thoughts in our mind and all of the what ifs, the maybes, the expectations of how bad things could be or might be, if we can let all of those things go by focusing on peace and having some peace of mind. And that really starts with your practice. If you have a spiritual practice, you're trying to cultivate peace of mind. You're trying to come at the world from a deep foundation of peace. That will really help you when the challenges of life come in. Because if you have a shaky foundation, as soon as problems come in, all of those hostile states of mind, all of those enemies to our own success, will suddenly flood into your mind and start harassing you mercilessly. So we can say in any situation, you've got a challenge in front of you, and you've got some friends and you've got some enemies. And your friends are the qualities that are going to help you deal with the situation in the best possible way. And the enemies are the qualities that are just going to make things infinitely worse. So we all know what those enemies feel like, because often they're harassing us on a daily basis. So really the antidote to them, especially in a time of crisis, is peace. So having deep peace.
But how do you get that peace? Because if if the default state for most people would be just an onslaught of anxiety and panic.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's going always back to your spiritual practice. So what we've talked about again and again, having that practice in the morning where you're connecting with the deepest part of your being. So you're dropping your awareness down from your mind and you're connecting into the deep depths of yourself. And it's like dropping yourself. It's like traveling from the surface of the lake where everything is turbulent and there's waves going to and fro. And that is your mind. And those waves on the surface and the howling wind, that's the anxiety and the fear and the worries. And so the antidote to that is to bring yourself down into the depths of your being. And in the depths of your being, it is always still, calm. There's a deep reservoir of peace within all of us. And so we need to do that practice when we're not having challenges, when we're not having struggles and difficulties in our lives. So we're centered there. So then when the onslaught of the world comes, we're prepared for it. We have that ability to bring ourselves into the depths of our own deep reservoirs of peace. And that's the right place to deal with the problems from.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, life is a huge challenge, and there's so much, we can do. 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 And there adversity and there's so much difficulty and about life that if you don't do that practice, like really hard to get through life, you know.
Yeah, like we just become a victim. We're just
you become a victim.
you know, we're just being pushed
being
one
tossed,
way or another.
Yeah, it's like being tossed by like a whatever, a ball on the waves of the ocean, and you have no control over where you're going.
Yes.
I mean, for me, that was one of the reasons that I really started meditating when I was 20, that I was really fed up with the idea of always being a victim of my own thoughts and my own constantly changing moods. So, you know, I would wake up and one day I'd feel happy and positive and enthusiastic about life. And then another day I could feel miserable, sad, or depressed. Or it's not that I was bipolar or anything. That's the natural state of any person, I think, going through life, is that you have no control over your moods. And I was so fed up with that I said, you know, I don't want to be this victim of my own mood swings and thoughts. And that's why I entered into meditation, and I read about meditation. It said meditation gives you this permanent state of well-being, of peace, poise, tranquility, happiness, joy. And I have to say, that's now almost 30 years ago, and it was true. You know, the actual promise of meditation was true. It was, you know, all these things that meditation promises, if you do the daily practice, they will come into your life. So I can definitely attest to that. Do practice.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I love that. It's very well put. So we're going to accept the challenge. So the challenge has appeared before us. We accept it. We understand that this is where our life is now. We've accepted that. And we've got peace. We've got some peace inside of us. So we're not just falling to pieces and being carried away by all of those enemies inside of us. So what is the next quality that we're going to bring to bear on the positive side to help us deal with the challenge? And this is a quality that is so misunderstood in the Western world. And I think it's so valuable to actually start to develop a sense of what it is and what it can do. And that is the quality of patience. So in the Western world, we're so impatient. We want everything yesterday. Like we order something, and if it doesn't arrive tomorrow, we're disappointed. We're cursing the postal system and Amazon and Jeff Bezos and, you know, whoever we can. And so we're so radically impatient. And one of the reasons I think we don't value patience properly is because we don't even understand really what it is. And so we think patience is just the idle person, just someone just sitting there and not doing anything. It's like completely passive and completely impractical. We think, you know, how is patience going to help us? But when Sri Chinmoy talks about patience, he actually says patience is not passive. It's actually an active process. And so that's really fascinating, because I think most of us think of patience as just simply waiting. Oh, okay, I've got to be patient. Okay, I'll just sit. And like you do that for 2 minutes, and then suddenly your impatience is back again. And so in some ways, what you could see is our impatience is we're trying to force a particular outcome from the universe. We're trying to make and force the universe to conform to our desires or our wants or our needs. And patience is accepting the universe. So again, along this idea of acceptance. But when Sri Chinmoy talks about patience, he says what you want to realize is the goal that you're aiming towards actually wants you to achieve it. It wants you to arrive there. So if you're dealing with a challenge and you're hoping, oh my God, you know, really hope I can get through this situation. You know, I hope I can find a way to navigate these difficulties and come out the other side. And Sri Chinmoy says patience is understanding that goal that you're working towards, it actually wants you to arrive there. It's actually like pulling you. It's like there's a cord linking where you are now and where you're going. And that patience is understanding that it's actively understanding that outcome wants you to arrive there. That goal of yours, it wants you to arrive there just as much as you would like to arrive there. So it's a fundamentally different way of relating to the universe, because it's putting your faith and your trust in the universe again. Instead of impatience is us trying to force things. It's us trying to use our will to say, this is how things should be. This should have already happened. That should have already happened. This should happen now. So we're trying to create what we think is the right situation and the right solution to the problem. Whereas patience is understanding the solution or the goal that we're working towards, it already sees how we're going to achieve it, and it's wanting us to arrive there. And so it's a very different feeling.
Very counterintuitive, because you want to proactively get there. So you want to expend all your energy to get there, but actually you're pushing it further away by rushing it.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to grasp at things. Whereas so much of life is like not trying to hold things too tightly, like letting things move through us and, move past us and not hold on too tight. And so patience as well, I think it allows us to let go of the attachment to time, and time no longer becomes our enemy when we have patience. So when we're impatient, time is always our energy. We're always fighting against time. And when you fight against time, you always feel stressed out. It makes you feel anxious. It makes you feel unwell. When you feel as though there's not enough time, that's one of the biggest causes of stress, is when you feel as though that you're in a war with time and that there's just not enough of it to do what you need to do. And so patience is this wonderful thing where you understand that the goal wants you to reach it and that there's a way that you're going to find your way there, but accepting that it's going to take the amount of time that's going to take. You're not trying to force it and make it happen before it's time. And then that allows you to stay in the present moment. And so impatience is always forcing you out of the present moment. It's always telling you things are not how they should be. I should be somewhere else. Like I should already be at some other point. But that doesn't help you, because it's always taking you away from where you are. Patience always is allowing you to sink into this very moment, because you've got faith. You're like, okay, this moment is the exact right moment, because I know this moment is going to take me to the solution. It's going to take me to the goal. And by remaining there as well, you've always got all of your full capacities available to make the right decisions, to do the right thing at the right moment. Whereas when you're impatient, you're never really there. So you're going to make mistakes along the way.
So how does patience help us to overcome challenges? So why do we need patience?
So a challenge is normally a situation where you don't know exactly how to solve the problem. So we're dealing with a situation where we can't see the solution to start with. So when we're impatient, we're pushing and we're trying to force things. And when we try and push and force things, we'll often say the wrong thing, we'll do the wrong thing, we won't be careful, we won't be present enough in the moment to do the right thing when it needs to be done.
Yeah. I actually have a moment, something in my life at the moment where this is very, very apt and appropriate, because actually my lunchroom, my restaurant at the moment is really struggling. And we've been struggling for about 3 months. So in December, I think it's part of the economic crisis, and people are saving their money, so they go less to restaurants, and we've really felt that. So the financial situation became tighter and tighter, and it's like you feel like I have to do something to turn the tides. But if it's something worldwide, it's like a worldwide trend where there's an economic recession and people are saving money. Like, what can you do about that? But the impulse is that I feel on myself also is, so okay, I have to immediately change everything in my restaurant. I need to advertise. I need to do this and I need to do that, and it creates a lot of stress. And even though I've been meditating for almost 30 years, that stress still gets to you. Like when it's kind of a base fear, like you're losing your source of income or your income is drying up, that is such a almost visceral emotion that you feel. Yeah. Like I've really gone through this kind of stress. At the same time, I feel I'm really helped by my meditation practice. It's not overtaking me. I'm still in control.
Yeah.
But it is an unpleasant feeling. And so how would I deal with that? Like using patience, because if I wait too long, maybe the situation worsens and then we have to close. Like, what would be the appropriate action, you think?
Yeah. So in that situation, that's the thing. You're dealing with a situation where you can't clearly see the solution to your problems. And so with patience, I would say patience is not passive. It's an active approach. So you're not thinking, okay, well, it's not that you're not doing anything, but it's simply that you're understanding, you're changing your frame, you're changing your understanding of the situation. You're understanding that if I stay in the present moment as powerfully as I can, and I pay attention to what's happening in the present moment, that will allow me the best possible likelihood of solving this problem. and you understand, patience is telling you there is a solution to this problem. Be patient. The solution will come. Be patient. The solution will come. But that allows you to keep staying in the present moment. And there can be small decisions that you may need to make along that path to solve some of the, to navigate your way through the situation. But that comes from being really present. And when we are operating from those base fears, where we're operating from a place of worry and insecurity, that is coloring reality. It's not allowing us to see things as they actually are.
Yeah, exactly. Because the danger, it can be a very dangerous situation if you need to change things, because you can easily misdiagnose the situation. Yeah, I can see that. Like if I misdiagnose the situation, I think, oh, it's actually my restaurant. It's me. I have to change something, and I'm going to buy new chairs, and I'm going to invest in all this furniture or whatever.
Yeah.
And it just turns out, no, it's just the ebb and flow of life. It will, the tides will turn again. It's not that you have to be completely passive. I understand you have to do something, but if you misdiagnose the problem, then sometimes, the solutions you try for yourself, they can make things worse. So it's always, I find, a very risky situation where you have these kind of challenges and you make the proper diagnosis of the situation.
Yeah.
And I do feel that for that you need patience. You need kind of a calm, neutral, very, very clear observation of the situation.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say there. Is it all comes about you being completely present in this moment, in the eternal now, and making the best possible decisions on a day-to-day basis. And if you continue to do that, and you have that patience that, okay, there is a solution, and the solution wants me to arrive at it. And so it's putting that position that the universe is a friendly universe. The universe has this situation, and there's something that I have the capacity to deal with it, and that I'm going to learn something by moving through and navigating my way through the problem. Then it allows you to keep staying in the present moment. And that's where you're going to be calm, centered, and able to be active when you need to be. And so,
yeah, I've also discovered that if you can be clear-minded and have peace of mind, then the ideas that will come to you, you will immediately know that this is a higher idea that I have to follow. So sometimes these ideas will come to you in a very clear moment, and you think, okay, this is actually my soul speaking to me. This is the direction. Yeah. And that's why I value the meditation practice so much, because it gives you these very clear, intuitive flashes. There's always guidance in your life, I feel. And I'm never really worried about things really going out of control.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's an intense situation. So I also appreciate I'm now in the middle of these waves being tossed and turned and kind of like trying to navigate my way through it. But it's also a very interesting time.
Yeah. And I think I think it's very beautiful as well that you can share these experiences and you can be vulnerable and open enough to share them, because everyone has these types of things going on in their lives. And it might be problems at their work, or it might be something different. But to be able to actually share the challenges that you're facing up to, and then for people to see that you're not falling to pieces, that you have some peace, that you've accepted the situation, that you're trying to be patient and you're trying to really be present and make the best possible decisions. I think that's really powerful, because very often, as you said, people will rush to try and think that I've got to do something drastic. I've got to really just throw a lot of energy at the problem. And that's not always the right solution.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. No, I believe in timing is very essential. So when the right solution comes, if you apply it at the right time, it can be a very small thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's all about having the patience and waiting for the right time and doing the right action at the right time. But it's
sometimes it's like that idea we've talked about previously in one of our episodes. We talked about waves, and so as a wave is going up, the tension and the pressure is building, and so it's coming up, and then the wave breaks, and then the tension is released. All of that built up pressure and the wave is released, and then things. There's this wonderful the wave breaks and it comes down, and as it's resolving and it's coming down, you never know how deep the trough on the other side of a wave is going to be.
Yeah,
and when you're on that downward point, and you don't know when it's going to start coming up again, it can seem really terrifying. And that's when you've got to be patient. You've got to have faith and be patient that things will turn again. And especially in something as secular as business, Like sometimes you're having really great times, and then sometimes you're in the tough times. And so you've got these waves going up and waves going down, and it's having faith that the wave is not going to continue to go down forever.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's at some point it will turn, and the wave in your business will start rising again, and it will start bringing energy and customers and all of the things you need.
We'll keep you all posted in the coming weeks. Going.
So there's many other qualities that we can bring to bear on the problems of our life or the challenges that we're facing. And so there's things like obviously our determination and our consistency and regularity. And so there's a lot of other practical things. But I think those things we've talked about are very useful for people because they provide a really great foundation that I think you can use almost with any problem. Like some problems need one type of solution, other problems need another type of solution. But I think these ideas, the idea of acceptance, coming from a place of peace and using your patience, I think those are very universal that you can use across all types of different problems and all types of different scenarios. So maybe I'll tell you a little story.
Sure.
That captures some of these ideas and experience that I lived out. And it was an experience that I mentioned at the end of the last episode. So
yes, I was looking forward to that. I hope we'll
tell the story because I think it captures some of the ideas of being in a challenging situation and how you can try and navigate the situation. So this was a continuation of my trip in India a few years ago when my baggage did not arrive. And I decided I would leave my baggage behind.
If you missed it, dear listeners, it's in the last episode 7, our travel episode. It's a wonderful, beautiful story. I do recommend listening to it.
So I decided I had a whole series of plans for that trip. So I was planning to go to Gangotri, which is the source of the Ganges, and Yamunotri, which is the source of the Yamuna River. And so there's the 4 holy rivers in India, and it's called the 4 yatras, is doing a pilgrimage to the source of the 4 rivers. So I'd already been to the other 2, Badrinath and Kedarnath, and so I was wanting to finish my yatra, my 4 yatras. But because all of my gear did not arrive, like I had my gear for living and moving around in the mountains, and that didn't arrive, so I didn't have any of those things. And so I felt like I was in a different universe now. I was living in a different universe. So I thought, okay, I want to fly as far as I can in India up into the mountainous regions. And so the furthest place away I could fly to is into Kashmir. So I thought, okay, I think Srinagar is the capital of Kashmir. I think that's the name of the town. But anyway, I decided, right, so I brought myself a small carry-on bag. I brought myself a few small items, and I jumped on a plane and I flew up to Kashmir. And Kashmir is just an amazing place. It's this amazing valley surrounded by mountains on all sides. So it's really like this beautiful valley that reaches far, far up into the northwest of India, up into the Himalayas. And it really is, I think it was called the land of milk and honey. And it's this place that's just got this really magical atmosphere and environment there. And the main city is based on the edge of Dal Lake. And Dal Lake is this amazing lake where it's got all of these houseboats on it. And so everyone from the Beatles to all sorts of people over the years has been up and stayed in Srinagar out on Dal Lake on these houseboats. And so it's a very interesting place as well because of the current political climate. So after partition between Pakistan and India, Kashmir was very much a disputed territory. So Pakistan felt as though it should be part of Pakistan, and India felt it should be part of India. And it's got a deep cultural connection with India. And many of India's sacred stories, from the stories of Shiva to the stories of the Pandavas and the Mahabharata, a lot of these stories happened in this region. So it's got a deep spiritual connection with India as well. And so there's this tension where Pakistan would like it, India would like it. So it's a very militarized place. So there's 10 million people living in the state of Kashmir, but there's 1.5 million soldiers. So as soon as you come out of the airport, it's this very different atmosphere. So India is very chaotic and beautiful and colorful, and so much is going on. When you walk out of the airport in Kashmir, and there's immediately barbed wire, military vehicles, like gun emplacements. And so you realize, well, okay, I'm not in the same place as I was before. And the interesting thing is you can't even use your Indian SIM card there. So you fly in, and I was expecting to be able to, call an Uber or do something, and suddenly my phone doesn't work. And so you actually have to get a different SIM card when you're in Kashmir. You can't even use your one from the rest of India. And when you get there, you actually need two different people to vouch for your identity to even be able to get a SIM card. So you can feel already that there's this level of tension in the atmosphere there, and it's one of the few majority Muslim parts of India now as well. So there's a lot of mosques everywhere, and you're hearing the call to prayer. And so I had this wonderful bit over a week traveling around Kashmir and visiting different places, and the Kashmiris are wonderful business people. They're really serious, hard-nosed business people, and they really know how to work things to their advantage. And a good example of this is what I call the pony mafia. And so there was this one village I went to called Gulmarg, and it's this high in the mountains, and I think it's a ski field in winter. But you get up there, so you take your taxi up there, and you think, okay, that's fine. I've paid for my taxi. That's going to take me to my accommodation. As soon as you get to the edge of town, there's this big barricade, and you get stopped. And they're like, okay, your taxi is not allowed to come into the township itself. And so you get out, and there's all these guys milling around, and you realize that the only way you can get to your accommodation is by paying one of these guys to take you on a pony, or a donkey, a pack animal. And so the local guys who run the pack animal service, they're so smart. They've made this arrangement that no taxis are allowed into the village. The only way to get from where the car stops to your hotel, which could be like 4 or 5 kilometers, up hilly roads, is to pay the guy to take you there on the pack animals. And so in these situations, it's always great. It's like a battle between their stubbornness and my stubbornness, like who is going to win. And so it ended up, I walked like for an hour to get to my accommodation.
Wow, you defeated the pony mafia.
Yeah, I like to call them the pony mafia up there.
Yeah.
But after traveling around this wondrous land, and this land as well, the land of Kashmir is famous for its amazing carpets as well. So the great Mughal Emperor Akbar, he used to go up there because this was a great place to go in India when it was the hot months down on the northern plains. You go up to Kashmir and it would be 10, 15 degrees cooler. And you're surrounded by beautiful scenery, and it's very temperate. So they have real strong seasons. So when I was there, it was autumn, I think. Yes, it was autumn. And so all of the apples were coming out. So everyone was harvesting apples, and you see the leaves on the trees turning. And so you really get the sense of the 4 seasons up there, which you don't in some other parts of India. And so it's the home as well of the beautiful Kashmiri carpets. And so Akbar himself brought some of the great carpet makers from Isfahan in Iran and got them to teach the Kashmiris how to make these amazing hand-woven carpets. And so now that's one of the great centers of hand-woven carpets now is Kashmir. So really beautiful place. And as I was finishing my time in Kashmir, I was heading towards Ladakh, which is another great Himalayan kingdom. And on the way there, I knew that there was this really sacred pilgrimage, and I was really interested in doing it. And it's called the Sri Amarnath Yatra. And so Yatra means pilgrimage. And so it's a pilgrimage that takes you to the sacred cave. And this cave was the place where Lord Shiva taught the secrets of immortality, really the secrets of the universe, to his wife Parvati. So Parvati was seen as being a mortal woman, and Lord Shiva was seen as being the god who represented transformation, the power of transformation. And so when he took Parvati as his wife, he knew she was mortal, so at some point she would pass away. So he had to teach her the secrets of the universe. And so the place he went to teach her the secrets was the sacred cave. And so this cave is way up in the mountains, and he left Nandi, his cow, at some lake further down. He left Vasuki, the snake around his neck, at another point, and he carried on alone with Parvati up to this cave. And there he taught her the secrets of the universe, which would make her immortal. And it's actually said that there's 2 white pigeons that were in the cave and overheard the conversation. And it's rumored now that they are immortal, and so that they've been living there for 10,000
Wow.
years. And so,
Did you see them?
no, I didn't. I did. So this will get to the story here. And so I was traveling through the mountains, so over these many high passes to get to Ladakh, and sort of halfway between Kashmir and Ladakh is this pilgrimage route. And so I was staying in a small village, and I got up really early, and I decided, right, today is the day. I'm gonna run this trail 10 kilometers high up into the Himalayas to the sacred cave. And so I was so exhilarated about going to this cave. I was, there was a real inner thrill I was having. And I remember that morning meditating in my room, and I was saying to the universe and to Lord Shiva, saying, Lord Shiva, whatever experience you want me to have, and whatever the cost of that experience is, whatever the price for that, to have that experience, I'm willing to pay it. I'm willing to pay whatever the cost is. And I don't even know why. It wasn't clear to me at that moment why I was having this thought.
Why did you say that? Why did you prime yourself?
Why did
you
this
primed yourself?
Why did it enter into my consciousness? So anyway, so I went and stood on the highway, and then I was trying to hitch a ride with someone. And so it's a very unusual situation for Indian people driving through the mountains to see this Westerner wearing running shorts, and a lightweight jacket, standing on the side of the road, trying to hitch a ride. And so, after some time, finally some very nice Indian gentleman pulled over, and I jumped in his car with him, and he took me through to the army checkpoint near the start of the track. And so already you start to get a sense of the place, where near the start of the track is this huge army compound. And so, there's like thousands of soldiers in this big encampment with barbed wire. And so I got there, and it was pretty early in the morning, and, you see that. And so this is all part of the atmosphere and the air of the place. So there's this sense of tension and concern because of the problems and the hostilities between India and Pakistan over the years. And the other thing to know is, as well, so this is a very sacred Hindu pilgrimage, and it's normally open each year during the month of August. And I was there in September. So officially the pilgrimage had ended. And so I'd looked up all of the details, and it said, yes, the official pilgrimage season is between sometime in August and the beginning of September, but it told me no other information. So I thought, okay, that's fine. That's not set up for the pilgrimage anymore, but, I believed I could still head up to this cave. So I run through, just past the army checkpoint. I don't see anyone. I run through, and at the very bottom of the track, there's a small village. And I run through there, and I also don't see anyone. And so I could see that, there's some people living there, but there was no one around. It was still before like 7:30 in the morning. And so no one was out and about. And so I start running up the trail, and as I'm going up higher and higher, it's this steep gorge. It's a steep gorge. And so there's this river deep down at the bottom of the gorge next to me, and I'm on this narrow, it's quite a nice trail, actually. It's very well done. And I'm running up and further, and as I'm getting up higher, these amazing views are starting to open up. So I'm starting to see these amazing mountain peaks. And I know I'm getting closer and closer to this sacred cave where the secrets of the universe were revealed. And so there's some feeling in my heart about, oh my God, this is so beautiful. It was a beautiful day. It was beautifully sunny, and it's blue skies. And so everything was glorious and beautiful in my life at that moment. And as I started to get closer and closer to the cave, I could see that people were doing some work on the track. So they were building bridges and repairing parts of the track for the pilgrimage for the next season. And as I came up onto a flatter section, suddenly, I didn't even see these guys. And suddenly on the path right in front of me, appear 8 Pashtun men. So the Pashtuns are men, they wear like a small turban. They're Muslim men usually. They have like large under-chin beards. And they wear like baggy, pajama style outfits. So almost
is
like
Pashtun, is it a religion or?
It's an ethnic group of people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and they're the kind of people who live up in the mountains in that region. And so I immediately recognized these men, and they stood all the way across the path in front of me, and they were all smiling and very friendly, and we were saying namaste, namaste. And then they started saying chai, 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 chai. And so chai means for them tea. And so I thought, oh, isn't this nice? What a beautiful day I'm having. I'm in this beautiful place. I'm off to visit the sacred cave. And now these lovely men have all appeared, and they're offering me some chai. I thought, this is wonderful. So they took me to the little hut that they were living in. And the little hut was just off the side of the track. It was just made of pieces of wood. and then large pieces of tarpaulin. And so we all squeeze into the small house. So all 8 of them and me, and they're all staring at me. And so like, you know, I'm like such an anomaly in the situation. And so they're all staring at me, and they're heating up the chai. They're giving me some biscuits. So we're all sitting there. Everyone's having a cup of chai. And so, you know, I'm smiling and you're saying, Kanam kia, hey, what is your name? And, you know, we're all just trying to make a little bit of contact there. And so I thought, oh, this is all very nice. And at some point I decided, okay, my time here is done. It's, you know, time for me to move on. So I said to them, okay, I go now. I go. They said, no, you stay. And immediately the atmosphere completely changed. Suddenly, like the atmosphere, you could cut it with a knife. So when I'm sitting there and they're being hospitable, it was this lovely, warm, friendly atmosphere. As soon as I said I wanted to go, it was like everything disappeared. Like all of that friendship, all of that kind spirit in the air, it was suddenly like, no, you stay. And I'm like, you know, no, I think I go. No, they say, no, you're a bad man. You're a bad man. You must stay. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like what is going on here? And then I noticed one of them had his phone and I could see he was filming me. And so I'm like, what is going on? So I walk up and I stand up to him and I said, excuse me, you're like, what are you doing with the phone here? And then he showed me, and I see a man on the other end of the phone who looks like a military man. And so I'm looking, suddenly I'm on this like, you know, WhatsApp call with this military looking guy. And I say, namaste. And he says, namaste. And that's basically all. He was just looking at me and I was just looking at him. And I thought, wow, what is going on? And I said, I'm saying, you know, what is happening? What is happening? And they say, police coming. You bad man. Police come. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm thinking, okay, there's some misunderstanding here. And so often in situations, and especially in India, you find yourself somehow you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're on the wrong trail. There's some misunderstanding. You've done something that was not clear or obvious to you. Something, okay, that's fine. Like I understand, like, you know, perhaps like I needed a permit. I'd done the best research I could before I went up. So I couldn't find any information telling me that I needed to sign in anywhere, but perhaps there was something. So perhaps I've made a mistake. So I said, okay, that's fine. Like, you know, we wait for the police to come. The problem is the police have started at the bottom of the mountain and they're walking up. So they're walking up like 6 or 7 kilometers uphill. And so we come out, they finally say, I say, let's go outside, and say, okay, we go outside. And as soon as we go outside, 2 of them come up next to me and grab hold of my hands, like really tightly. So I'm like, oh, okay. So they were holding on to me as though I was going to run away or to stop me being able to run away. So I'm like, okay. And so we're waiting and like time is really passing by, and it's taking such a long time. And I start to say, okay, why don't we walk down the mountain towards the police officers? So, you know, to speed things along, because I'm pretty confident that once the police come, I will explain, you know, I'm not from these parts. I did not understand whatever the problem was. I'll apologize and that will resolve the situation. And so as we're walking down the mountain, the 2 Pashtun men standing next to me, and they were 2 of the older ones, and they're holding onto my hands so tightly. And I'm like, well, okay, well, at least this is going to be an interesting story, you know, at least, but, you know, I'm pretty sure we'll resolve it very quickly. And so we're walking down the hill, and we walk down maybe 1 kilometer or so. And then finally I see these 2 police officers walking up, and I think, okay, finally, yeah, you know, we're going to talk it out, resolve the situation, all will be well. And so once the police officers get about 100 meters away, I notice that one has a big stick and one has a rope. And this is not so unusual, because one of the things with Indian police officers is Indian police officers have 2 most sacred objects. One is their whistle and the other one is a long stick. And this is the only way to bring some order into India, is by blowing a whistle and waving a stick at people. So if you are, like, for example, if you visit a palace or some important place in India, some historical site, there's all these guardrails and ropes saying, you know, no one is allowed to cross here. You see all sorts of people getting over those, wandering around. And the thing that stops them is when they hear the man with the whistle blowing his whistle and walking towards him with a large stick. And then immediately everyone's behaving themselves again. So it's a very important part of Indian police equipment. And so I'm looking at these 2 guys and I'm saying, you know, I'm bowing, saying namaskar, which is, you know, a more formal way of saying namaste. And so I'm expecting to have, you know, we're hoping to have some sort of good reaction. But immediately I see there's the 2 police officers, one shorter, one who was obviously a mountain man, and then one taller man who's from the lower lands. And I see him very aggressively, wide-eyed, and he starts shouting at me and starts waving his stick, and he starts almost running towards me. And, I'm putting my hands up like this. And in the meantime, the shorter mountain policeman runs around behind me, very roughly grabs both of my arms and takes this big, thick yellow rope he's been carrying with him and immediately ties my arms up behind my back. And so immediately I'm caught off guard. It's a great situation. Suddenly I found myself with the very aggressive policeman in front of me, waving the stick in my face and shouting at me, and the other one very roughly tying my arms behind my back. So my position is not to resist. It's like, accept this, accept the experience, don't resist. So there's no fighting. I'm going very soft to allow the man to pull my arms around and tie me up with my arms behind my back. And I'm just saying, I'm saying to the police officer, Apkanam kia hai. Is like, Apkanam kia hai means, what is your name? And he is not responding. So I start to realize that he doesn't actually speak Hindi. And Hindi is the only Indian language I speak a little bit of. And so then finally he starts to speak in English. I say, English. And he starts to say, bad man. And I'm thinking, like, what is this sort of...
He means Batman. You're Batman.
What is this bad man? What is this bad man thing? So I'm like, no. I'm just trying to tell him, no, I'm just a hiker. I'm just hiking in the mountains. He's like, what are you doing? I'm saying, oh, I love the Indian mountains. I love the Himalayas. I'm just hiking. I'm just looking, just enjoying the mountains. He's saying, no, you bad man. And I'm like, okay, there's definitely some misunderstanding here. But I'm accepting the situation. Okay, this is the situation I found myself in. I'm now tied up, and I now have a very aggressive policeman waving a stick in my face. And I'm like, this is the experience I'm having. So I was still trying to keep myself centered in a place of peace. And so they thank the Pashtun track builders and say, okay, we take them away now. And so they start leading me down the mountain. And so we start walking down the mountain. And it's really interesting because I know it's a long way down. It's like 6 or 7 kilometers. It's going to take us an hour and a half. So I'm like, okay, relax, like be patient. Like this is going to be a long ride. Like I need to get down to someone who can really speak English and explain the situation to them. So I'm staying very calm and relaxed. And what starts to ratchet up the tension is every 10 or 15 minutes, the aggressive policeman he has another brainwave. So we start walking down for 10 or 15 minutes. And then suddenly he says, search him. So him and the other guy turn around, they put the stick down and they start rummaging around in my pockets and take everything they have. So they find I have a banana in one pocket. They find in the other pocket I've got my phone and some rupees. So they take all of this stuff on me. Yes, we've searched him. So they were very pleased with themselves. And then as we start to walk down, I start to notice these people absolutely appearing from nowhere. And it was like the Pied Piper, the Pied Piper, playing his tune. And then suddenly all of these people start appearing as we're going down the hill. And it was all of these local mountain people who somehow live somewhere in the vicinity. And they had heard the story that there was this great criminal, this bad man wandering in the mountains, and he's been caught by the police. So they started to all appear, and they were kind of sheepishly following us along. And, I'd started talking to them, namaste. And so within 20 minutes, there was about 7 or 8 local guys that had come from nowhere. They weren't the guys who was with us earlier, but they'd heard there was something happening. So they're following along. And so it's become this great procession. And the aggressive policeman was so proud of himself. He's at the front with a stick, waving his stick around in the air, and the other guys next to me or behind me. And, he's leading me along like his prize donkey. So he's got the rope in his hand and he's pulling me along. And we've got all these local guys following along behind. And then things start to get a little bit more serious. Like next time we stop, he has another brainwave. He stops and he starts looking at everything I have. And he points to my shoes. He says, shoes, how much? How much they worth? How much? And so, very little, $50. And so when the police officer who's tied you up and is threatening you with a stick, when he starts to ask you how much your shoes cost, you start to realize that you're no longer in the same universe you were living in before. So when I was running up the trail, I thought I was living in this very lovely, it was a beautiful day. Everything was perfect in the world. And suddenly I find myself in a situation where I'm being threatened with a stick by someone who
You thought you were living in the friendly universe, but it turned out you were living in the hostile universe.
So this is the question. Which universe was it? And so my position was 100% that like I started to feel those thoughts coming to the force. So like a thought would pop in like, oh my God, these guys could beat me and there's nothing I could do. Thoughts would appear like, oh my God, they could arrest me and nobody knows where I am. They could keep me for several days or weeks in the prison here. And how would I contact anyone? How would anyone know where I was? So these thoughts would come in, but my firm determination was to stay as absolutely present in the moment and coming from a place of peace. So I was just staying calm and relaxed. And I was being very patient as well. So I was keeping all of my focus in the present moment. I would not allow myself to be taken away by the thoughts of what if, the maybes, the coulds, all of those anticipations of what could happen, because I wanted to have all of my resources and all of my energy available at the moment it was most needed. And at this moment, I was just simply being led down by a hill. I accepted that. And, there was all of these people around me. And what I was trying to do was I was trying to pay attention to every single person and to glean as much information from the situation as possible. So it was amazing how sharp my focus became. Like I very rarely in my life had this clarity of awareness. And so I could tell so much about the relationship between the two police officers just by listening to them talking amongst each other, the body language, the way they would look at each other. And I was attempting to be as friendly and engaging and connecting with all of the other people in the situation. So there was all of these village guys who were watching the situation, because I knew that I needed to create as much goodwill as possible between myself and them. Because if things turned badly, if the police officers suddenly decided to start beating me or hurting me, I needed goodwill from these other people because they would be the ones who would step in to stop it. So I was hyper aware in a way that was really so clear and powerful and unique. And so I was picking up all of this information as we were traversing our way down the mountain. And every now and then the police officers would get really tired and they'd sit down and we'd have to wait for 10 or 15 minutes while they caught their breath. And so I could see as well and understand that they were really annoyed that they had to go all the way up the track to capture me. So, this really was really put them out for the day.
It better be worth their while. You better be a really bad man.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was, definitely a hint of annoyance towards me from these police officers because I had, they'd been sleeping in bed and, suddenly they'd been roused to go capture this bad man far up the mountains. So this is a very challenging situation, but I'm using those same skills, the idea of patience, the idea of peace, the idea of acceptance. And that's allowing me to be in the best possible situation to try and navigate my way through it. And I had no idea how it was going to resolve itself. So there's this worry, there's this anticipation of what possibly could be. And so it was always a matter of feeling though, no, there's going to be a resolution. I don't know what it looks like, but if I'm patient and present, like I will find my way. I will find my way to the best possible outcome in this situation. And so finally we started to get close to the village at the bottom of the trail. And as we started to get closer, I could hear the young police officer who started to shout out to his friends down in the village. And they'd amassed in the town square. And so there was about 30 to 40 men only, all standing in the middle of town waiting for me. And we're further up the hill, we can see down into the village. And he's shouting and waving to them and waving his stick triumphantly that he has been out into the wilds and he's returned, having caught this bad man. And so I'm really staying very centered and peaceful and calm. And so as we're entering this group of men, they merge and they come all the way around me. So suddenly I'm in the middle of this throng of people, and suddenly everyone is shouting. Everyone is shouting and talking and saying, "Who are you? Who are you? What are you doing?" People are talking in Hindi. People are talking in Urdu, and guys start poking me. So there's people poking me, and I'm like this strange animal that's been captured in the mountain and been brought into this mob of people. And I could immediately feel the energy building. Like there's this idea of the energy rising. And what you've got to be really careful in the world is mobs of people. Because a mob of people or a group of people is not like an individual. An individual is irrational. You can negotiate in a rational fashion with an individual.
Yeah.
With a mob of people, things can really go wild and out of control.
Yeah, so, just look at any soccer stadium in Europe.
Yeah,
and you can
exactly.
See
and
power of the mob.
So I knew that this was becoming a dangerous situation. And so I could feel the energy rising in the group and people were getting agitated and upset. And there was one guy in front of me who was speaking English and he was saying, who are you? What are you doing? Why are you here? Where are you from? And I knew, though, that he was not the key person in the situation. There was some part of me that intuitively knew that there was someone else here which was the person I needed to communicate with. And so I'm scanning the crowd, and I'm filtering out everyone who is not important, like anyone who is just a member of the group. And then I spot one guy standing towards the back of the group, and he's got a khaki shirt on and khaki pants. And I could tell that he was the boss man. He was the leader of, he was the person in charge of this whole situation. And so while all these people are shouting and poking at me and, carrying on, I just completely blocked everyone in the situation out and just turned all of my attention to this man. It was like suddenly everyone else ceased to exist. All that existed in that moment was myself and this man that I was focusing all of my attention on. And I wasn't even sure if he could speak English, but I immediately just locked on to him and I said, my friend, this is all my fault. Like, I have created this situation and I'm so sorry for the inconvenience that is caused for you and your fellow people here. This is entirely my doing and my mistake. And for that, I'm deeply, deeply sorry. And so, because I knew the energy needed to come down, I needed to bring the energy down. And so the best...
How did you get the presence of mind to make an apology at that time?
So what I knew that was needed, and this is the thing, this is things that you don't know. This is things that intuitively come to you by being as present as possible. Because my normal reaction would be to argue. Like I like when I find myself in a situations, especially with petty bureaucrats, I do like to poke them and prod them. And so I'll normally be disagreeable and push back against their petty authoritarian behavior. But in this situation, I knew what was absolutely necessary was my humility. The only way to bring this energy down, which was rising in a dangerous fashion, was to humble myself absolutely and completely. And so that was what I did. It was basically, I bowed down to this man and said, look, my friend, and I said to him, I see you are a very good man. I see that all of these people here really respect you and they really value you. And I see that your role here is to protect these people and to protect the pilgrims. And I see that you must do a very good job of that. And that is why these people love you and they're very devoted to you. And so that was basically all I said. So I deeply apologized and took all responsibility for the situation and the inconvenience that it had caused them. And then I pointed out that I could see that this person had good character. This was a person with some good qualities and some obvious standing within his community there. And he looked at me for a couple of moments more, and that was the most intense moment of the whole thing, because I'd said my part, I'd done everything I could. Like I'd said all that needed to be said, and now was the waiting. And that waiting may have only been a few seconds, but I still remember it feels like time, it's like an eternity each second. And suddenly everyone else had gone quiet as well. So everyone knew that this was the crux moment. Like everyone had been shouting and poking and prodding, and now everyone had seen that I had talked to the boss man. I talked to the zamindar. It was like an ancient Indian story, of a wrongly accused criminal being brought in front of the zamindar. And now the crux moment had arrived. Everyone with bated breath was wondering, what is the zamindar going to do? What will his decision be? And so I'm waiting, and then he looked at me and he said, untie him. And I could see immediately the young, angry police officer who had proudly captured me said, no! He was so upset and just wrote, no, no, no. The police chief looked at him and said, untie him now. And the young police officer...
English, it was all in English.
He spoke perfect English. And so, and he was also the one who I'd been looking at on the WhatsApp call. Further up the mountain. I realized, oh my God, that was the same man. And so, but the young police officer was so annoyed and aggravated that he had to untie me, because here I was, the great bad man that they'd captured. And now he was having to let me go. So he was deeply, deeply disappointed. So he was arguing and arguing. The police chief said, no, untie him now. And then he untied me, the young police officer, and the police chief, who was the man in the khaki outfit, said, please follow me. And so he immediately started walking towards his own private residence. And so we walked through a small gate, and he took me to a tap and said, please wash your hands. And so he gave me the water. So he said, this is warm water, so I could wash my hands and wash my face. And then he said, please remove your shoes. And then I took my shoes off and we walked into his own private bedroom. And he said, please take a seat. And then then the first thing he said,
At this moment, were you afraid, or were you
no,
totally? You felt
you could have feel that everything had changed. Like
oh
in
yeah,
that moment, that I was living in a different world again. Like the whole
yeah,
reality had changed, and suddenly everyone had realized that this police chief had accepted me in some way. So suddenly,
mm,
all of that energy and that aggression had disappeared. Everything had disappeared. Everyone was waiting for his decision, and everyone had implicit faith in him. Like whatever
but
he decided,
what a narrow escape, though.
yeah.
What a narrow escape.
And then the beautiful thing was the first thing he got me to sit down on his bed, and he sat down in front of me. First thing he said, chai, chai, chai. And then within 5 minutes, he's boiling up some chai on his little cooker. He's given me a packet of Indian biscuits. And then we're sitting there sipping chai together, eating biscuits. He's asking, where are you from? What are you doing here? And he explained to me that they had terrorist attacks on this trail. And so their role is to protect the pathway from any terrorist attacks. So their great fear is that someone at some point might go and do something dastardly to the sacred cave. And so their role, their whole job in life is to guard the trail. And because I'd come through in the morning before they were up, they suddenly were in a really tricky situation because there's someone up on the trail that they don't know who they are. They don't know what the person's intention is. And so they were worried that this person, and they'd received reports from someone up in the mountains that they'd seen someone running up the track. And so they were thinking worst case scenario, oh my God, there's someone coming and they're going to damage the sacred cave. And so this was a really serious situation for them. And completely unbeknownst to me, their job was to protect and keep the track closed and not allow anyone to come through. And simply because I'd come through early as they were expecting anyone, I was ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And so he starts explaining, and it's so sweet. Like within 5 more minutes, he starts inviting his friends, and so we ended up with about 5 or 6 guys there. He's introducing me to all of his friends in the village, and they're saying, please, Mr. Vaishnav, next year you must come back when the pilgrimage season is open, and we will look after you. You will be our great guest. And we shared WhatsApp numbers, so I've got these guys on my WhatsApp, and it turned into the most sweet and lovely experience. I saw really the heart of all of these people, and they really had only the best intentions in their heart. And it was simply a terrible misunderstanding. But those misunderstandings can have terrible consequences.
Yeah.
If I had acted in a different way or made different choices, if I hadn't been careful and precise in paying attention in my actions, then I would have found myself in a whole different reality.
So this reminds me of the trial that they have young Buddhist monks go through in Thailand, where they put them out into the jungle to face the tigers.
Yeah.
And that is how they have to overcome their fear. So a tiger in the jungle, if they smell fear on you, they attack. So the moment that they're faced with this tiger, they have to be fearless. They have to have no fear in them, and only then will the tiger not attack them. So it's like you were in that situation. You're like the tiger was right there. You had to be calm and poised and clear-minded. And otherwise you would be, attacked.
Yeah.
And
very, very easily I could have been arrested. I could have been held in prison for many days. I could have been transported to another prison somewhere else. There's all these potential outcomes, and you can feel them at the edge of your consciousness. You feel that you're in an unknown place that could go in so many different directions. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have all of your poise and all of your awareness in the present moment. And so then there was a little interesting follow-up to that. So then they decided, okay, I've had enough time of tea and enjoying and relaxing with them. And they said, you're now free to go. But it was a long way back out to the main road where I could catch a ride back to the town I was staying in. So they said, someone should give you a ride. And the young, angry police officer said, oh, yes, please, I will give him a ride. I will give him a ride on my motorbike. And I immediately knew he had devious intentions with this. Yeah. But there was nothing I could do. The police chief said, okay, yes, that's fine. You take him. And first of all, I had to say to the police chief, police chief, I'm really sorry to say, but your police officers have actually taken all of my possessions. They have my telephone, they have my rupees. And so he goes next door and he shouts at me, hey! And so he comes back with my phone, my rupees. And so I was like, thank you so much. And it's really funny because when I opened my phone to look at it, I could see that he'd been trying to get into my Apple phone, which he couldn't do, but he managed to open the camera. So he'd taken all these photos of himself, like sitting on his bed in the room next door, which is totally hilarious. But I knew he had devious intentions for me. So when I got on the motorbike with him, I was again having to go into full, battle mode. I was fully present and aware for any possible outcomes. So we drive away from the village, drive around the first corner. As soon as we drive around, he stops and he says, "Rupees, give me all your rupees now." And I knew he was going to try and shake me down in some way. And so I thought to myself, I said, what I will do is I will give you, the equivalent of, say, $5. I will give you $5 worth of rupees now. Maybe gave him 200, 300 rupees. And I said, I will give you the rest when you drop me to the highway. And he looked at me and said, okay. And so I get back on the motorbike with him and, and there's some real tension between us because I know he's trying to totally shake me down and he just has no goodwill. He really wants to make me suffer as much as he can.
Yeah.
And as we're getting close to the highway, the road starts getting steeper and steeper. And at some point, as we're nearly at the highway, we're starting to go relatively slowly. So I immediately just jump off the motorbike. And then I run up ahead a little bit and I'm closer to the highway than he is. And he says, "Hey, rupees, rupees, rupees." I said, "My friend, not today. Naughty, naughty, naughty." And I run up to the road and he realizes in that situation that there's nothing he can do. He can't chase after me and try and beat me. He only had power when he had the advantage that I needed his help to get out to the highway. So as soon as I found myself in a situation where the balance was a little bit more even, I was like, I'm sick of this guy and his behavior. He's a rotten character. And so I did not give him any more than that. I said, $5, like that's all I'm giving him. I'm not giving you
a good bargain.
I didn't want to allow his bad behavior. I didn't want to indulge in his wrong actions. Yes. For him as well, like there's karmic consequences. So I was helping myself and helping him.
Fantastic. Wow, what a story. What a story again. We have to kind of close it here for today, as we're nearing the end of our time limit. But
I'll just say one final thing to do with that story, because I think it's good to understand, like, what can you take away from an experience like this?
Exactly.
Because that's the thing. Like, it was a really challenge. It was one of the most challenging and difficult experiences I've found myself in, because it's a problem that it's really unclear what the solution is. So I used the best set of qualities and skills that I had available. But what was wonderful to me was it showed me something about myself. It revealed something about myself to me, that I do have a depth of poise and a depth of character, that I can go through really, really difficult situations without allowing them to overwhelm or destroy or damage me in some way. And I can go through them if I do it really wisely and really pay attention, and I'll actually come out the other side stronger. Because that was the thing. When I came out of that situation and found myself free again on the highway, I felt like the richest man in the world, just to simply have my own freedom again. Because in some way, having your freedom taken by someone else, being detained, being tied up, and during that whole experience, I had no freedom. I had no free will to do as I pleased. Yeah. They had the control over me. And suddenly to find myself on the highway again, and to be have enough free will to choose my own actions and to go where I please, just felt so unbelievably amazing. And
it's what we talked about when you have experienced some darkness and then it's over. That's like the happiest you are.
The joy I felt inside me was just really such a wonderful thing. But the great lesson I've taken forward is there's so much more to me than perhaps I even realized myself. So and
of course, when you say me, you mean any human being.
Exactly.
Right? Humanity.
All of us have an amazing wealth of ability and capacity inside of us. And so for me, it was such a wonderful revelation of some of my deepest capacities. And so when I got back to my room, I was really praying and thanking Lord Shiva for the experience that he gave me and the price I had to pay. And so I realized that experience was much more valuable even than if I had reached the sacred cave, because it showed me and revealed something that is tremendously and transcendently valuable.
So that experience maybe was the sacred cave.
Yes.
Wow. Shall we close it with that?
Yes. That is all I needed to say. Thank you. Thank you.
And it's fantastic. So, dear listeners, thank you again for staying with us to the end, listening. If you like this podcast, please consider subscribing, tell a friend, leave a nice comment for us, and we will see you next week.
All the best.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.